Welcome to the Divorce Matters Podcast, where we teach you how to survive the family court system. We will give you no-nonsense, straightforward strategies for getting you an equitable outcome. We guarantee you won't hear this advice anywhere else. A reminder that we are not attorneys and this is not legal advice. However, we will help you more than any attorney ever will. And now, here's your hosts, Michael Alexander and Mark Fidelman.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Divorce Matters. Joining me today is Walter Richardson. And before he introduces himself, we're going to talk about three things. One is how to be a good parent. Second is how to fight false charges. And three is how to minimize conflict. Now, these are interesting topics because when I look at these three, I'm like, you're kind of put into an impossible position, especially if somebody's sending out silver bullets or false charges. I mean, you're supposed to be a good parent, minimize conflict, and you're supposed to behave in a way that, is exemplary and almost godlike while somebody's shooting from you from behind and making up all sorts of stuff about you. It's very difficult to do. And so I'm real interested in how Walter does it. I'll share how I do it. So with that introduction, Walter, can you give us a little bit of background about yourself before we jump in?
Yes, thank you very much for the introduction. I'm very happy to be here. So again, my name is Walter Richardson. I am the Vice President with the Fathers' Rights Movement. You can look us up on Facebook or our website, tfrm.us. And so I got thrown into this mix about 3.5 years ago, and shortly after started volunteering for the Fathers' Rights Movement. So as far as kind of how I got here today, my relationship started back in 2013 with a woman I had had a love interest with in high school. I'm in my 30s now, so that's a long time ago. We basically knew each other since we were like 15 years old. So there's a lot of trust there, and quickly found out that doesn't really matter when a child is involved. But we went through. We had a very tumultuous relationship. We were probably by and large both good people, but our relationship was completely toxic. And when a child was introduced into that relationship before marriage, and there had been some infidelity issues and just a lot of hateful words and really mean things said to each other, it became just even more toxic and even more tumultuous. So we tried to make things work for about 6 months after our daughter was born. And after the first restraining order, I might add, so I was one of those guys that went back for more. But yeah, once I went through that stuff and kind of saw how some of that worked and saw that it's a constant uphill battle for a guy like me that's just excited to be a dad and wants to be a dad and get to have all those memories with my child, I said, whoa, there are major, major, major issues in this thing that we call family law. And someone needs to do something about it. So I'm now, again, the Vice President of the Fathers' Rights Movement, put together a crisis hotline about 2 years ago, which I'll talk a little bit more about here in a few minutes. And I've done some speaking across the country. I've been to Washington, submitted a bill in the Tennessee State Legislature, which passed the Senate unanimously, but failed in a committee, of course. I've got some experiences. I'd love to share what's worked for me and just give you guys some advice and go from there.
Yeah, so let's just jump right in. So tell us why it failed in the committee before we start down your story. It failed because I'm guessing money or pressure from the women's rights movement, one of the two.
Pressure from domestic violence. There's a domestic violence group in Tennessee. I forget what they're called. But needless to say, they had, I think it was like 15 of their supporters emailing committee members. And so some of the committee members got soft. And I will say, and I hope that this goes very wide, when you have something that is being considered in the legislature please contact your representatives and put pressure on them to support it. The domestic violence groups and the bar association are, quote unquote competition for us, and they're very, very organized. They've got a lot of financial resources, and um, yeah, if we're ever going to really get these sweeping laws in motion like we have in Kentucky, it's going to be because we get more organized.
Yeah, which is interesting because I assume you weren't the vice president of the men's rights movement back then, right? Or else you would have organized a bunch of people to do just that. Is that correct?
Well, so I was actually the legislative manager when we were going through that, and it was just no. I mean, we sent out emails, we posted stuff on social media, um, but it was it. We did not have the turnout that we hoped and expected that we would have. I guess I'll put it that way.
Well, that's a shame, and I hear that from a lot of leaders across the board of not just men's rights groups, but parents' rights groups, kids' rights groups. Everybody that's looking to help in this fight for equality. Essentially, that's what it is, and also minimize the destruction on the families that are caused by a financially motivated and incentivized family court system. Topic for another day, of course. But let's move and segue quickly, Walter, before I go on a rant, into your story. So tell us what happened. You don't have to tell us about how the marriage ended, but tell us, at the point of divorce or separation, and let's start from there.
Well, so because our relationship was so tumultuous and we never got married, well, a couple clarifications here. I want to back up just a second. So I volunteer with the Fathers' Rights Movement, and I just want to, for the listeners out there, I just want everyone to know that we are the Fathers' Rights Movement. We understand that fathers are primarily affected as the non-custodial parents, typically, not always, but typically. With that said, if you are a mother, then please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We completely support parents on both sides having equal access to their children. Of course, as long as there's no negligence or abuse and things like that. We can get into that stuff another day. But
Walter, how do you know the abuse is real? A lot of it's fake.
Well, yeah, and that's why I said we can get into that another day, because it is we can go down this road all day long, but the burdens for those accusations are very low, and I think we can even get into that more later on in this conversation, specifically on point two. But yeah, the burdens of proof for both of those, which if you review your state laws and burden of proof, you will find that it's very, very, very low, and it's actually down to a percentage point. So I think it's like 21% or something like that the accusations are true, and that basically means a ruling against you if you're the respondent to a petition. So anyways, that's we will hear you, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Whether you're a man or a woman, a mother or a father, doesn't matter. If you're going through a fight, then please feel free to contact us. You're not going to be left behind just because you're a mother. And the second thing, I was not married. We were engaged at one point in our relationship, and again, it was just a very tumultuous relationship. There were just a lot of if I'm completely honest with myself, probably some emotional abuse on both sides, where the relationship got to a point for me where my ex was getting very upset over very little things, and for a long time, until it kind of wore me down, I respected her concerns and tried to be there for her. And it got to the point where I was like, look, this is just ridiculous, totally out of control. I can't handle this anymore. So I would shut down. I'd play video games. I'd leave and go for a drive. I would do anything to escape it. And so we actually broke up for probably 3 months while we were engaged. We were engaged. We were building a beautiful home here in Franklin, Tennessee. And she actually had a moment of infidelity. She went downtown Nashville and met a man and and had a moment of infidelity with him in the backseat of a car. At least that's the story that I've been told. And I didn't know that at the time, but she ended up breaking up with me the next day, actually, and started speaking with the police, started talking to dating, I guess, a police officer here in my area, and then wrote me a letter and asked to meet me about 2 months later. So we met back up, and I think this is where men fall victim to really bad relationships and our emotions. And I, I was at the point of moving on, but I gave in, and we got back together, and probably 6 weeks later she was pregnant. I did go through the DNA testing and all that, so I'm certain that I am my daughter's father. um, Tried to make things work, and I was actually, well, let's see, we found out she was pregnant on, I think, a Wednesday, and then on a Friday I got let go from my job. So I moved in with her. We lived separately at the time. I moved in with her, and about I guess about at the 6 month mark of her pregnancy, we got in a huge fight. I had brought up the cheating stuff because I had found out, and a woman that I was friends with in high school had actually sent us never had any type of sexual interaction with or anything, but this was kind of the gaslighting situation that I was in. Had sent us a baby shower gift. It was a blanket, and she saw the package and she said, is this your friend?" And I was like, "Yeah. I mean, what's the big deal?" And she lost it. I mean, just went completely crazy, and was throwing stuff and being very aggressive towards me. And I said, "Look, I've never slept with her. She lives in California, which is across the country. She's married. I haven't even seen her at this point. Let's see, I guess I was 27 or 28. She had moved to California when I was 18, so I hadn't even seen her in like a decade." Like, you cheated on me, and then you started talking with a police officer. And so I threw that in her face, and she said something to me that will live in the back of my mind for forever, and was really indicative of the types of abuse that I was dealing with that I didn't even realize. And this is a sensitive thing that I'm going to put on the podcast anyways. I typically don't talk about this, but she said, whether it was true or not, the purpose was to hurt me. She said, "Yeah, and his was bigger than yours, and I enjoyed blanking him more than you." And I was like, "Wow. I mean, you're almost 7 months pregnant with my child, and or presumably at this point, I didn't know, presumably my child. And I'm living here because I've been let go from a great job that I had. And if there was ever a moment that you could push me to get really upset, it would be now." And I just looked at her and I said, "Wow, I can't believe you said that to me. I'm going to sleep on the couch tonight. Do you want the light on or off?" And she said, "You can turn it off." So I turned it off, shut the door, and went and lay down on the couch. Which I think proved that I have a lot of restraint, needless to say. So let's see. I guess right around that time, I mean, very shortly after that, we had another big argument, and she wanted me out. And I said, "Well, you can't get me out." Her dad came over and said, "Leave." And I said, "Look, I don't have anywhere to go. I lost my job. I don't have money to go and do that. I had a lot of money in savings, but so the next day they call the police. The police advise her, "Look, you can either evict him, which will take 1 to 3 months, or you can get a restraining order." So by like 3 o'clock, a sheriff rolls up and says, "You've got 30 minutes to get your stuff and get out." And I'm like, "Oh no, here we go." So she texted me and said, "You're not going to be there for the birth. You're not, it's going to be my dad," and all that stuff, right? Just to hurt me.
Yeah.
And about 2 weeks later, we went to court. She dropped the charges. She dropped the order of protection in the hallway of the court because I had, of course, by that time moved out. And probably 2 weeks after that, we were back together, which which was, probably the biggest mistake of my life.
Oh, totally. Especially after what she did.
Yeah, well, I'm thinking, well, she can't do this again and get away with it again, right? I mean, because she already did it, obviously, to get me out of the house, because she just didn't want to live with me at the moment because she's stressed or whatever. So she can't do it again and get away with it, right? That's what I'm thinking, and all of my naivety. And so we get back together, and I was there for the birth. It was definitely, the greatest experience I've ever had. And quickly after that, not quickly after, but again, about 6 months after my daughter was born, all hell broke loose. Um, we were fighting, arguing. I've got a video of her yelling at our daughter to shut the F up, because she was screaming all night one night, just crying, and mom was stressed out. And I went in and said, look, let me just take her. And she said, no, this is all your fault. And I'm like, okay, all right. I'll take the blame for this one too, I guess. So we both had attorneys at this point, and we had tried to get an agreement for a step-up plan to 50-50 custody at 3 years old. And it didn't work, but we did agree on some right of first refusal time, because at that point I was working nights. I had gotten a nighttime job at that point, to make some money, and mom was working days. And she kept violating the right of first refusal time, and in violating it, I lived a quarter of a mile from her at this point in time. And she hated me so much that she was driving with my, infant child 72 miles round trip to her parents' house to drop my daughter off in the mornings, go to work like a 6 or 8 hour shift at the most, and then go back and pick up our daughter that evening. So I got irritated, to say the very least, and I went and confronted her at her house, which was a horrible idea. And from that came the second order of protection. We went to court 6 weeks later. So that temporary order of protection lasted for 6 weeks, because her attorney was on vacation. So, I just don't get to see my kid while you're on vacation. So, and I did a little bit, but it was.
Why didn't you file an ex parte to try to get in there and move to? Because did you file it?
No, because I'm at the will of my attorney. My attorney knew I didn't have much money, so I'm totally at his will and the will of the attorney. They've already done discovery. Well, they've done financial discovery, so they know what we're about and what we have. So they're not going to fight for you if you don't. If I had $500,000 sitting in my checking account, of course the guy would have done anything I wanted him to. but I didn't. And so he did try. He tried a little bit. But the accusation that she had made was that I had tried to run her off the road with my car, and while my daughter was in her car. And my attorney, we ended up getting into court, and my attorney did a phenomenal job of proving that was a total and complete lie. I pulled up next to her car and rolled my window down, and she admitted to that in court. So it didn't her story and the truth did not align. And so I actually walked out of that here. It was so funny. The judge, settles that, says, yeah, we're going to give you a 6-month order of protection, which was actually it was actually a blessing in disguise. And I think this will go into some of my points here in a few minutes. It was actually a blessing in disguise because it gave us a timeout period. Where we couldn't continue the crap from our relationship spilling over into our co-parenting responsibilities.
But why would it be a blessing? But then you have you're on the defensive the rest of the case, though, right? I don't know if it's a blessing.
Well, yeah, but so this is where I really lucked out. So he rules in favor for a 6-month order of protection. Now at this point, I've not spent one single.
Based on what?
Based on stalking, because I showed up to her house. So they ordered it based on stalking. They didn't order it based on, assault or, the stuff with the vehicle that she was alleging, which was really, I mean, they
Yeah.
were serious allegations. But so the judge goes, okay, so now let's talk about custody. And he goes, so dad has the child on this day, this day, this day, and this day. He ends up giving me 37% custody in that same hearing. And my attorney writes on a sticky note, we need to get the F out of here now, and underlines now 3 times. And the judge keeps going on, and her attorney is like scrambling, and she's like raising her hand. My daughter's mom, she's like raising her hand and everything. And I'm like, whoa, this is a surprise. And then my attorney writes, don't say an effing word, and underlines effing 3 times, and slides me that piece of paper. So I walked out of there with a 6-month order of protection, which sucked, to say the least. I got 37% custody. I won that hearing. I didn't have any
Okay.
custody, but like
From
6
before.
hours
Yeah.
3 times a week before that. Yeah, so I walked out a winner. And here's I think how I did that. All of their accusations surrounded, or were about me being a bad boyfriend, fiance, ex-boyfriend, whatever you want to call me, not me being a bad father. I was on the stand for 30 minutes, and 100% of it was about my daughter. I refuted the accusation of me trying to run mom off the road with my car, which that was, the judge bought that, and because it was true, and my attorney did do a really great job in proving that based on the evidence that they had. But I kept my testimony about my daughter and my desire to be in her life, and how much I loved her and cared about her and wanted to be, a role model and support system in her life beyond a bank account. And so I think based on the circumstances, the judge believed that. And yeah, so I mean, that was 3 years ago. My daughter's almost 4 now, so that was 3 years ago. I went weeks without seeing her, which is pales in comparison to I'm sure what a lot of people listening to the show right now are going through, where it's been months and years. And I've heard the stories, guys. So I just want you to know that while I may have just gone weeks, I feel it.
You feel luckier than most. It should be 50-50 and rebuttable 50-50, but you feel luckier than most.
Right. Well, we went back to court multiple times, and I ended up getting up to 43%. She had started dating someone. Well, she dated multiple people, with my daughter in tow, and she wasn't responding about a Christmas. One of the things that wasn't talked about, and so that the 37% was a temporary order, and one of the things that wasn't covered was holidays. Well, we went through the first set of holidays, and we were approaching the second set, and she wasn't responding about Christmas. And I said, look, you had her last year. I want her this year. And she ignored me. And I said, look, I'm taking you to court. I mean, I'm not playing this game. I haven't had a Christmas with my child yet. It's now her 3rd Christmas, and this one's going to be mine. And my attorney supported that. I had to pay $2,000 to prove a point, but I proved the point, and I won that hearing. I also got a paramour provision, which is very rare in Tennessee. I'm sure it's very rare in other states as well, and it's even more rare for people who aren't married. But I really lucked out there. Are you familiar with the paramour provision and kind of what that means?
I am not. I've heard it before, but I have never looked into it.
It basically says something to the effect of neither parent can have a romantic partner in their residence while the child while they're having their parenting time between the hours of this and this. So it's basically to keep the love interest spending the night before marriage and things like that. I think that's probably a good thing for kids to not be exposed to anyways. Personally, some people may disagree, but you don't really want your boyfriend, your ex's boyfriend or girlfriend of 2 months, waking up with your 10-month-old. So
Yeah.
yeah, so you know, how to be a good parent even when you're right. There have been so many arguments that my ex and I have had, that I have basically said, you know what, here's what I can do. I can fight this and fight her, but she's not a reasonable person. And you can't make sense of crazy. I had a pastor, I don't want to get all religious on anyone, but I had a pastor that said, look, um, stop trying to understand crazy. It takes a crazy person to understand crazy. You cannot rationalize with a crazy person. So if you put yourself in a situation where you're trying to be reasonable and say, hey, this makes sense, with someone who's not reasonable or just doesn't want to give in to you, and they're already in a place of power or control in the parenting dynamic that you're in my opinion, what you can do is you can cause more unnecessary conflict, even if you're right. And it gets to the point where it can get to the point where you are so focused on winning a fight that it is putting more stress on your child. Mom or dad might be saying, hey, you know what? He's being a jerk or she's being a jerk. I'm going to take it out on you. And they may even tell the child that. They may even say, your dad is being a jerk or your mom is being a jerk, so you're not going to whatever today. You're not doing this today, just to be mean. And so there came a point in time for me where I had to decide, is it good for me as a father to fight this fight? Or is this going to create an even worse parenting dynamic if I win this fight?
Support for this podcast comes from KidsMatter.Charity, a nonprofit dedicated to fighting for kids' rights in difficult divorce situations. Donate at KidsMatter.Charity to help them restore common sense to the family courts.
But why should you be the only one that has to think that? Why aren't the attorneys getting together
I shouldn't.
and saying, we need to reduce the conflict here in order to heal this family? And I already know the answer. The answer is because they don't make money when you guys are getting along. They only make money when you're not.
Right.
But you have your own advice for that?
I don't. No. I mean, change society, change the world.
No, it's not change society. You have a system based on, the family court is an adversarial system, kind of like it is in criminal.
It is.
And in civil. So if you have an adversarial system with two people that, were in love at one point and in a relationship, and then, when that love bond is broken, two people are very hurt and they go after each other like they're hurt. And then they put into a system that's adversarial. So now it's hurt on steroids. And then, you have attorneys that are incentivized to keep the fight going. Well, that's the hell that a lot of us are put in, and it's completely wrong. And nobody's shutting it down because there's too much money in the system to shut it down. It's only people like you that are trying to raise more awareness, but there needs to be more, which we'll talk about in a minute. But please continue.
Yeah, I'll comment on that. You're right about every single thing you just said. I completely agree with you. I don't disagree with you on any of that. Our society does support that, though. I mean, we've seen it. We saw it with the Gillette commercial. We see. I was watching Four Christmases the other day, and what's his name? I can't even remember the character's name. The guy from Wedding Crashers. The baby spits up, and he loses his stuff. And like, I get it. It's funny. But there's underlying truth there, right? I mean, that's a stereotype, and to have a stereotype, there has to be some underlying truth. So Vince Vaughn's his name. So there's this theme that like dads aren't as good of parents as moms. It's complete dog crap, to be honest. there's a TED talk with a woman. I forget her name. She's an attorney. She only represents men, and she talks about she talks about, attorneys go after men and say, okay, tell me the teacher's name and tell me, the report card stuff. And she says, well, ask dad what the 5-year-old's favorite superhero is. Ask him how high the daughter likes to get thrown up in the air before she gets scared, or, ask a dad those types of questions, because that's where the dad comes into play here. But the court system doesn't care about that. The attorneys see billable hours. They know what you're worth. They find, I mean, that's like the first question they ask you. They schmooze you in the consulting phase of the attorney client relationship, and then they say, okay, let me see how much money you got. So they know how much you can fight, and they'll take every call from you that you want to make. I mean, if you want to say, yeah, but I asked her to put on the red shoes today and she put on the blue shoes, a lot of them will, if you've got the money in the bank, a lot of them will take the call. You want to split up Beanie Babies, let's do it. Let's waste 6 hours working on that. And in my opinion, a lot of the judges are still old school. It's very old school, societal roles for dads to be making money,
Right.
and moms to be raising children. And society's changed a lot, a whole lot.
Well, it's changed a lot, and family court used to be this thing nobody wanted to participate in because it was kind of straightforward, and then some really smart attorneys got involved and started bastardizing the rules,
Right,
and incentivizing the system with money, and Title 4D came down, and all hell's broken loose. And this system is a joke.
it's a big one.
And it's not constitutional, but the appellate courts don't seem to care. And the only remedy that I've seen them work is, a federal court, or, a very, very straightforward, this judge effed up type of situation. But most of the time, appellate courts don't want to get involved.
Mm-hmm.
Supreme Court of the state doesn't really get involved. Federal court has to get involved, but it's expensive going through all of that stuff, and you've got to be careful of a lot of things in federal court that
Absolutely.
weren't previously argued in state court, or the federal court's going to kick it out. So you got to be very conscious. Most attorneys don't know how to do this stuff. I mean, there's a reason why you have an attorney for your family court case, and then you have a totally separate attorney for your appellate case, and because they're two different languages to these people. So how is somebody supposed to learn that stuff on the fly without a legal background? It's really difficult. Well, they don't want you to, because they don't want you to be a problem.
Yeah, I don't think you're supposed to. I mean, that the goal is, they don't want you to have the knowledge to fight for yourself and make sense of the words that are coming out of your mouth. They don't want you to be able to do that. It's really tragic, because it hurts our society far more than the lawmakers would ever be willing to accept. I mean, it really, really, really does. There are so many phenomenal men out there that would have been great fathers if they were given the chance, and they never were. And not only were they not given a chance, but when they said, you know what, I don't even get to see my kid, I'm not paying this anymore, then they're deadbeats and they don't love their kids and blah 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 blah. But they've spent weeks and months mourning the death of kids that are still alive. It's disgusting. I mean, it's I'll jump into the crisis hotline now. The Fathers' Rights Movement has a crisis hotline. If you're going through stuff, please feel free to give us a call, 907-312-5552. You can call or text us. Again, it's 907-312-5552. And we are fathers and mothers just like you guys. If you call and you're a dad and you happen to get a woman to answer the phone, please just ask to speak to a man if you'd be more comfortable speaking with a man. You can also email us at crisis@tfrm.us. But we get about 400 calls on average per month to that hotline. I just looked 2 days ago. 42 hours of conversation on the hotline last month, just in December. And we get voicemails as well, if in the rare occasion that we don't answer. But I answered. It was probably a year ago, and I'm like having dinner with this girl I was dating, and we were talking about it, and this guy calls. I didn't answer the phone because we were at dinner, and I pulled my phone out and listened to the voicemail right there in front of her. And I said, I just want you to listen to this. This guy's like 45 or 50 years old. At least that's what he sounds like. And he's just bawling his eyes out. I mean, just losing it. Because he can't see his kids, and it is really, really, really just a sad state of affairs that we're in. And that's what a lot of those phone calls are like. I mean, as a 30 or 40-year-old man, you're not picking up the phone calling some unfamiliar number because you're having a good day. You're having the worst day of your life if you're making that phone call.
Totally.
So yeah. And there are times where we have to do welfare checks on people. We get text messages that say, it's over, I'm out, I'm done. Don't call me. I'm going to solve this problem right now. And we have to call the police to do welfare checks. Because there's a certain level of liability that is placed on us at that point. If we don't take appropriate action, then that's not good. So this is really, really sad and unfortunate stuff that we're putting families through. It has absolutely nothing to do with the best interest of the child. I tell people all the time. I have men come to me and say, "Hey, I'm going to go for full custody," and I'm like, "Why?" And well, mom is, doesn't do this right or doesn't do this right. And I'm like, okay, is the child safe? Yeah. Okay. Is mom, a drug addict, or, does she beat the children or anything? No. Okay. Then what's the point? I mean,
what is the point of moms doing it to dads?
Oh, it's the same thing. I mean, it goes both ways though. I mean, men are certainly more affected than women. There's no arguing that. We have people come to us all the time and say, you should change the name of the father's rights. I mean, it'll never happen. Because men are affected at far greater numbers than women are. But we shouldn't do that just to get back. I guess that's my point, is if you're using your child as a weapon to hurt the other parent, you are a horrible parent. It doesn't matter if you're a dad or a mom. That's irrelevant. If you're using your child as a weapon to hurt the other parent, you are wrong. That is wrong for that. Or you are wrong for that. Yeah, I feel like I'm ranting now. But I think that's really important stuff to think about. I mean, you really got to be careful with that.
I want to make sure we cover the 3 points that we were going to cover, and we can do it in rapid succession.
Yeah.
First is, okay.
Yeah.
So Walter, you've got a significant other that's throwing every accusation at you under the sun, and using your child as a weapon. They've weaponized the child, they've weaponized the system, and how do you look from within and decide two things? One, how am I still going to be a positive, inspirational parent to the child? It's not their fault; they didn't choose to be in the situation. And then two, how do you minimize conflict with somebody that's, firing cannons and rockets and guns at you?
So first thing is, I think I actually have these out of order. The first bullet I have is protect yourself from allegations. The second one is minimize conflict. I think those actually need to be swapped. So minimize conflict. Are you still in love with your ex? Because if you are, and you're going through a divorce or a separation, you really need to work on, as quickly as you can, not being in love with them anymore. Because that emotion right there will get you in trouble. I have people that have been separated for more than a year, and they're like, but this and that and this and that. And I'm like, are you still in love with your ex? And they're like, no, I do, I do wish things could be different. And I'm like, it sounds like you are in love with them. And if you are, they are not your friend anymore. They have proven that. How much money have you spent? $15,000. Okay. And you think that person's your friend? How much time have you missed? When's the last birthday you were at?
No, at all.
That person does not care about you. Okay. And And if you're still having those feelings of reconciliation, you need to put those to bed quickly. I don't know everyone that's listening to the podcast, but listen to me loud and clear. Without breaking any laws, do whatever you need to do to get out of love with that person. That doesn't mean you need to go date other people. You need to figure out where you can find joy in life. But you definitely need to get that out of your mind. Minimize conflict, disengage. There, a lot of my problems in my situation came from me trying to rationalize with an irrational person. And a lot of that came from, 3.5 years of being in a horrible relationship with a person who was really good at gaslighting me and making me feel like, every issue in our relationship was my fault. Our arguments went a lot like this. Um, hey, I really don't like, or, you're such a jerk, or you're this or that, or me saying, this, I really don't like it when you do this. And her either saying, well, but you did this. And it's like, okay, well, we can talk about that, but I want to talk about this first. Um, and then I don't want to talk about this right now. Okay, well, you know what? We'll just table it for the next 6 months, and then we can talk about it then. Does that sound good? I mean, we can't have a relationship if we can't sit down and look each other in the eye and say, this really bothers me. This really bugs me. So you're certainly not going to be able to do that when two attorneys come in and you're fighting over access to your kids. You're definitely not going to be able to rationalize with someone who you're already separated from, probably has a financial interest in not getting back together with you, and probably hates your guts for either real reasons or ones that they fabricated in their mind. So minimize conflict, disengage, get out of the situation. That doesn't mean leave your house. If you're married, you need to check your state laws, but be really careful leaving your house. That can be looked at as abandonment. So, you probably should make it at minimum a phone call to an attorney to make sure you're okay doing that. Um, if you still live with your spouse or the person you're separating from, gray rock. Okay. If you don't know what that is, Google it. It's basically short answers. Yes, no, okay, fine, sounds good. Bye. Um, don't feed into the emotions. You're gonna have your own emotions. You're gonna want to say, you're gonna want to get excited and say this and say that and say, well, you're wrong and I'm right, and this is, this is the truth, this is the facts, and everything that you're saying isn't, true and isn't facts. But you're probably not winning the war at that point. You might win a battle, you might win a bunch of battles, but the war is getting custody of your kid. It certainly 50% of the time.
But how are you going to do that? Okay, so you're in a bias system. If you're lucky, you've got a judge that understands this, but most don't. And there's just a presumption that since you're a father, you're more of an ATM machine than somebody that can nurture and support the kids. So you're already at a huge disadvantage. And then the system weaponizes women and some men to use it to, shoot silver bullets at people, make up false accusations, and none of it has any repercussions. I mean, you could go in there literally tomorrow and say, my ex-wife tried to murder me, and it'd be a total lie. And the judge can't do anything about it or won't do anything about it. And so when you have a system like that, it just encourages attorneys to coach their clients on how to do this. And, if you get them crying on the stand or to manufacture evidence, then, it just takes one judge to believe it, and you're kind of screwed for the rest of the case unless you know what you're doing to fight back, which is incredibly difficult and challenging. So that what leads me to my last point is, how do you recommend people fight these false charges that are thrown at them? And I'd say most of the people I talk to, that's the case.
Yeah. Well, I think if you get the charge, that's like the problem is already there. It's already happened. And I don't know what the percentages are across the country, but I would say that there is a very large percentage of these cases, once they are filed with the court that are successful, because the burden of proof is so low. So my suggestion is to avoid it, and avoid it by way of minimizing conflict, by disengaging.
It doesn't even matter if you minimize conflict. It doesn't matter.
Well, so there's one more thing here. There's one more thing, and this is a small thing, but it's something that I started doing, and it actually prevented me from getting arrested at least once. Protecting yourself from allegations. Buy a digital audio recorder. $60. It's the cheapest insurance you can buy. $60. Go to Walmart, buy a digital audio recorder. Get
Not admissible unless the other person.
What do you mean it's not admissible? Of course it's admissible. You put a digital audio recorder in your pocket and live your life and leave it recording.
Not admissible. Nope. You can't admit it. Not in California, maybe in your state.
Well, I know you can in Tennessee, but you can check with someone in California.
You can, but it's not admissible. It's illegal to record somebody without their knowledge in California.
No. But that's the thing, though. It's not about getting your ex in trouble for something. It's about proving that you weren't somewhere or doing something that your ex is saying you were.
It's not admissible. I had a video. I couldn't get in.
But was it a video of you and your ex?
Yep.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying if your ex says, well, Mark came by my work the other day and flipped me a bird and threw an egg on my car. And you say, well, here's a video of me at Taco Bell ordering a chalupa at the same time.
If it's just a video, yes, that's admissible. But any kind of recording. Also, you're saying time-stamped audio then you're just running a recorder the entire day. Absolutely,
100% of the time. If you're in the heat of your moment and you are going through the worst part of your divorce, 5 weeks after getting your paperwork, you should have a digital audio recorder in your pocket, on your person, all day long, every single day. You're going to sleep, it's recording. It doesn't matter. And the point is to prove that you weren't somewhere that an accusation says you were, or that you weren't doing something that an accusation says you were doing.
I mean, what kind of system are we in where you have to prove your innocence? That's not the system that should.
Oh, it's a complete BS system. I mean, yeah.
And I understand what you're saying. You're just doing it to protect yourself because you're fighting a BS system. But what I find is, let's say you said you were somewhere else and she makes the accusation and it's false. There's no repercussion. So she's going to keep doing it because there's no repercussion. And, but I mean, to the extent that you're saying people have to record themselves 24/7, I mean, that's just not tenable with most people. But if that's what you got to do, I guess that's what you got to do.
Well, you shouldn't have to do it.
I know you shouldn't have to, but there's no, it's not like criminal court. It's not even like civil court. I mean, it's just if the judge believes hearsay, it shouldn't be admissible, and there's no other evidence, he can give you a restraining order. It totally impact the rest of the case, he or she. And that's, to me, a violation of constitutional rights. If it's happened to you, you have a case. You can sue them civilly, not the court, but you could sue your ex civilly. You can take them to federal court. You can appeal. I mean, these are things attorneys don't tell you. But it's just egregious what's happening and what's going on across the country just to gain an upper hand in the case.
Sure. And you can do things like sue for perjury and stuff like that. I have never seen that work. I'm not saying that it hasn't, but I've never seen it work.
Not for perjury. Not for perjury, because, in California anyway, there's a special exemption for that. But if there's damages as a result of that perjury and you can prove it, then you absolutely have a case and you should do it.
How about I haven't seen my kid in the last 5 years because of her lies in court? I mean, that would. Yeah.
I think if you got that in front of a jury, you probably have a good case if the civil judge doesn't try to shut it down before then.
But it's still tough because so much of this stuff is subjective anyways.
Yeah.
There's, very, very little of the things that come across in family court, the stories and the accusations that come across in family court are proven with hardcore evidence. I mean, very, very few of them. It's just my word versus your word, and putting a person who knows no one in the situation in a place to make a decision about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you know, at the same time, those people are trying to keep their jobs and not make a bad call. And when mom says, you know, I had the most infuriating part of my case was uh, my ex's dad standing up in court in that second order of protection hearing. He stood up on the stand. I mean, it was like straight out of a movie, and points at me and looks at the judge and said, "This man," and like shakes his finger. And I remember it very vividly. "This man is violent and dangerous, and he will hurt my daughter and my granddaughter."
What?
And I'm like, man, the most violent and dangerous I've ever even considered being is right now in this moment, hearing you say that to me when you know the crap your daughter has put me through. I mean, you know what she's put me through. And now I'm sitting up here. I've spent $12,000 on orders of protection so far, of money that I don't have to spend. Um, of money that could have been
Totally.
invested,
That's
you
for your
know.
kid.
I mean, it could have been. It could have bought. It could, yeah. It could have bought a brand new BMW to send her to, you know, a 3 Series BMW to send her to college and you know, pay off her 4 years of education with no problem. I spent 42 grand. Could you imagine what that would what that could look like in 15 years invested modestly?
That's nothing compared to my case.
It's
I know.
yeah, it's total it's total it's total crap. And but it in my case, I think I really did have a really great judge that saw through that. Um, I had in my attorney just straight up asked my ex, "Has Mr. Richardson ever laid a hand on you?" And she said no. She said no in court, so she didn't lie. When he asked her directly, I'm sure he would have asked her for proof of that. She'd hit me multiple times.
You don't need proof. You don't need proof.
Right. I mean, and that's the scary thing.
I mean, if you're a man listening to this, best thing you could do is be the first one out of the gate and say she's hit me multiple times. Because I'm not advocating this. I'm not. But if you really want to win, lie your ass off, make all these accusations, and I'm not advocating this, but that is what the
I'm not advocating for that either.
These attorneys are saying to their clients, you know.
Well, Mark, I could have and should have done that, and I would have been telling the truth, but I didn't.
And you would have the upper hand. You went to spend $45,000, and the case would have been over a long time ago, probably, had you done it, which is sad, right? You don't want to lie. You don't want to lie.
But do you know why I didn't? No, if I would have done it, it would have been true. I still have pictures to this day. I mean, I have pictures of her handprint on my face. I mean, I had the police came multiple times because of her yelling and screaming. I called the old place where we lived, and I said, "Hey, look, you know, you're the landlord. I might need your help here because I've got some stuff going on."
So why didn't you do it?
Well, I'm going to tell you why. It's it was the third one: minimize conflict, disengage. I was still in love. I wanted things to work out for my daughter. I was stupid.
But you didn't know.
No. I thought, she's going to go off and do her crazy stuff and be mad and she'll come crawling back, right? And and let me tell you guys this. You guys that are
after the first one.
I know. You guys that are listening to this, let me just I don't think there's ever a time when I could be wrong about this, ever a situation that I could be wrong about this. If your ex has gone to the lengths that my ex went to with the orders of protection and stuff like that, do not fall victim into thinking that things will work out. They will not. They will get worse. Your ex will get smarter. She will get more strategic. She will talk to her friends. She might go and talk to an attorney behind your back and set you up. Do not do it. Disengage. Get out of love as quickly as you can. It will help your case in your situation because the emotions that you have from the separation with your ex and all the memories and the pictures and, finding the hair and the love letters and all that stuff, right? All that stuff we motion go over. That's that stuff, burn it. Oh. It doesn't matter anymore. And you're going to cost yourself a lot. You're going to cost yourself time. You might even cost yourself your entire relationship with your children if you go down that road. Get away from the situation.
Right. More often than not. Yeah, totally. Well, I feel like we can go on forever, but we're at that hour where we got to wrap things up and maybe have you back. But excellent conversation. Thank you for sharing your story. And again, you want to give out your contact information just once again.
I do.
Just so that if anyone needs help, they can reach out to you.
Yeah. I'll give out my personal contact information with TFRM. W. Richardson at tfrm.us. That's WRICHARDSON at tfrm.us. Please feel free to reach out to me if you'd like. And then our crisis hotline by phone and text is 907-312-5552. Again, it's 907-312-5552. Please note that we're not attorneys. We can't give out legal advice. If you're feeling anxious, depressed, hopeless, things like that, like those kind of really powerful emotions, then give us a call and we can talk to you about stuff. But please don't call us if you need to know what paperwork to file for something. We can't help out with that stuff on that line. If you need that help, find us on Facebook. You can also email the crisis hotline, crisis@tfrm.us. That's CRISIS@tfrm.us. And I want you guys to know that y'all aren't alone. I think Mark and I could probably see eye to eye on this, if nothing else, that we understand how tough this stuff can be. And got a lot of people out there that have been through it. And, so just please use your resources and find groups and find people to help you out when you're going through it.
Well, the only thing I'd add to that is it's a biased, unconstitutional system. Once you understand that and recognize that, it's just a game. The game is to get more money out of you, even if it means separating you from your kids. So once you know what you're in, and I find a lot of people don't even know what they're in.
No.
Once you find out what you're in, then you calm down a little bit. You know you're going to get screwed, but then there's remedies and ways. And listen to the rest of the podcasts that we have out there in episodes. But there are ways that you can mitigate those, or even go on the offensive and do things that will swing your way by using the court rules against them and your opposing party. So with that, Walter, excellent. Love our discussion, and look forward to having you back on.
Perfect. Thanks so much again for the opportunity, Mark. And I'd love to be back on. And one other thing, Casey Sowers is our executive director. It'd be great if you want to, hear what TFRM's got going on and what we're planning for the future, and how that might help some of your listeners. Then, I think he'd be a great guy to have on here as well.
Yeah, please do, as always, introduce me. And if anyone out there has anyone else that they feel they want to introduce to the show, especially whistleblowers. We've had one whistleblower on. We're going to have 2 or 3 more upcoming. These are insiders that are revealing the criminal and illegal activity that's happening within family courts, CPS, and I got a few surprises. So stay tuned.
Thanks again for tuning in. A reminder that we are not attorneys and this is not legal advice. We advise you do the research yourself or to contact an attorney you trust. There are very few of them. This was Divorce Matters Podcast.